Our fleet plan is very conservative with all the ordering, because we always look at what we have, what we own, how much we buy, and how much options we would take. So we can actually, depending on market demand, increase the capacity or even reduce our growth significantly. So the order book reflects that. It's a big order book, but it's a big airline by now. So we do actually reflect that flexibility with a very big margin upwards or downwards. We own most of the aircraft, so matching capacity and demand is the markets may grow slower or faster. So one thing is obviously which markets are growing, which is the interior of the aircraft, but in terms of the number of aircraft, as we own the aircraft, if we feel that the aircraft which we intended to replace with new aircraft, we can actually still use them because the growth is much higher, then we can continue flying them, because we never fly the aircraft to the end of its life. We just say at this point we would like to replace the aircraft, but if the market requires, we could do a little bit more until we get some extra capacity from the market. The majority of our current deliveries are replacements for the older, be that 747s, A340s or 737s. If we look at that market segment for the group of airlines, I don't have the exact number in my head, but when I talk about this number of orders which you just raised, that is less than half of what the fleet is, and we're talking another 10 to 15 years of delivery stream. So actually the majority of that fleet also goes in that time frame. So we don't feel we have over-ordered. I think the A340, 300s and 600s, let's put it this way, the 300s are for us roughly a 250-seater, and the 600s are roughly 300-seaters. The 600s are all relatively new. They are on very long haul where we need that capacity. And the 300s, some of them are older, which will be replaced as they reach the age where we want to replace them. Not where we have to, but where we want to replace them. But you can see that we want to continue operating them, because we talked about our recent concept of restructuring long haul. And as our CEO has mentioned, we are moving a couple of A340s into this new A340-300s, into this new operation. So that gives you an indication they're there and they will continue flying. I think it's a great aircraft, it's a great move forward, because we have been pushing, I think, the MAX and the Neo on the small versions like the 737 and the A320 would not have happened without a certain trigger which the Lufthansa group pushed for Swiss on the C series. But this one is the same thing. It's following, if you save roughly 15% of fuel, or whatever the sector length fuel savings would be, it's very beneficial to the environment, to the cost, everything. So it's a good move for that aircraft. When you're now asking me what does it mean for Lufthansa, we have relatively new A330-300s. We're happy with the range which we have at the moment, and the range we need beyond is actually covered by the 350s, which we are getting from 2016 onwards. So for the time being, and I say for the time being, we do not have a requirement in that market segment, which does not mean we don't like the aircraft, but we can't have a requirement and buy every aircraft in the market. We try to streamline a bit. I think say in the design is a bit much. We give our inputs. We try it through the whole Lufthansa system, operations, technique, planning. We try to give our inputs to the manufacturers, what we would expect those aircraft to be able to do, where we see it would be disadvantageous because there may be too much cost being built into the aircraft if they are overperforming. So that's where we sometimes differ from some other requirements from other carriers in the world in certain regions. But I think those inputs are then looked at, and Airbus or Boeing or Bombardier, so they put it into a global perspective that they can sell not only to a Lufthansa or alike, but globally, which is something we would want as well. So we have our input, also in the A330neo, but for the time being, we haven't bought it. The 747-8 versus the A380 versus a couple of other aircraft which are on the market. The A380 for us is slightly above 500 seats. The 747-8 is just below 400 seats. So you have roughly 130 seat different. And that for us already is a different market segment. And then we look at the benefits of the aircraft individually. And when you look at some of the key components, what we look at as an aircraft, we talked about NEOs before. They save fuel. Well, the 747-8 has a Dreamliner engines on it, so it's brand new engines. It has a brand new wing. So the economics, although it's smaller than the A380, are very compelling. And at the same time, it offers us a different market segment where the A380 is a bit too big. When we ordered the A380 in the beginning, which was like very early, it was 2001, actually before September 2001 happened. And we had an anticipation of a span, we need probably around this number of aircraft. But we may need a little bit more or a little bit less. So we had the right to pull some options to increase, and we didn't use that increase. So we're actually still pretty much on track what we wanted, but because of various market happenings, the increase in the market did not happen as we wanted it. So that's why we, for the time being, decided we do not need more than the 14 aircraft which we have ordered. And the 14 actually is, when you look at the first publication in 2001, that was 15 aircraft. So I think our crystal ball from our network management people and sales teams was pretty accurate. When we looked at the fleet base and the number of types we had, partly because of natural growth, partly because of the airlines which we have bought, which were integrated, which we have partnered with. So we ended up with a lot of types. And in order to reduce cost, yes, but also to increase operational flexibility, because less types means also we're a little bit more flexible in the whole scheduling scenario. So we use the assets better, more efficiently, and that gives us quite a percentage points in seat mile cost savings when we translate this less complexity and more operational flexibility into cost. I think in terms of numbers we wouldn't want to comment, but we have less types and we have the most modern types and most fuel efficient types. So it's a significant percentage number. Many people regard old aircraft as they need to go. Whatever old is, the definition of old varies throughout the industry. They're all younger than me except our Junkers. But the thing is, what we really would like to see is a reliable and safe operation and comfortable. So it's the cabin and it's the reliability which we have with these operations. The average age will go down slightly, not that much, because economically it doesn't make that much sense to go down a lot, unless you have real disruptive technologies for new aircraft. And this is why we operate the aircraft, and I give you one example. One of the last 737s which we sold, classics, delivered to the customer, which was a multi-sector flight. The pilot afterwards called me and he said, Nico, I delivered that aircraft and it's a pity we give that away. We had 0 squawks. Like there was not a single orange or red light on those multiple sectors, which even on newer aircraft is extremely rare. So they are very good, they're well maintained. Yes, we have our excellent in-house Lufthansa Technik facility, but this is something where we are quite happy to keep the aircraft as long as they perform well. When we looked at our long-haul fleet, we knew we needed some replacement eventually for the second batch of 747-400s we have. We knew we needed some replacement eventually for the A340-600s, even though they're still young today. We're talking beyond 2020 here. And we also know that beyond 2020, the remaining A340-300s, the today younger segment, will then be old enough for a replacement. So we needed 2 market segments. And we looked at those segments and we found that actually the best addressing of those market segments within our fleet structure was a combination of the 350-900 as a sweet, for us, the sweet spot of that family from Airbus, and the 777X, where we worked very closely with Boeing, like some other customers. and we were pleased to be able to come to terms with Boeing and sign contract number 1.
Do you have any undisclosed options on that 777?
I think we always keep, as I mentioned briefly, a certain flexibility in our contract. So when we say we ordered 34, yes, we have ordered 34. Do we have some flexibility beyond? Yes, we do have some flexibility beyond. And the same goes for the 25 A350s. There is flexibility beyond.